Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Tiffany Ziegler, and I'm the Training and Compliance Specialist here at the County Board. Thank you to our friends that are joining us virtually. You do have a Q&A section where you can ask them. I'm going to turn today's presentation over to Jody Coulter. She is a bereavement coordinator at the Hospice of Western Reserve. We're very thankful for you joining us today. I know we have a number of people joining us for this is something that all of us can benefit from. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here, for those of you here and those of you here today in the room with me. Like Tiffany said, I'm Jody. I'm a bereavement coordinator with Hospice of the Western Reserve. And being here today is such an honor because my career kind of started down here at Society for Handicapped Citizens as a music therapist. So this is a population that's near and dear to my heart. I was working in the group homes and the residential facilities, and now I work in hospice. So it's just interesting to see how life comes full circle of a place that really touched my heart that I've never forgotten. But before we start, can you all hear me okay? Is this okay? Before we start, I'd like to give you a little quiz. I know it's Wednesday morning, but if the answer is false, they're true and false questions, so I'd like you to raise your hand if you think the answer is false. All losses are the same. Grief always declines over time in a steadily decreasing fashion. When grief is resolved, it never comes up again. Children grieve just like adults. Expressing feelings that are intense is the same as losing control. There's no reason to be angry at a deceased loved one. You guys are really smart. Only sick individuals have physical complaints after grief. In their grief. Children need to be protected from grief and death. You will have no relationship with your loved one after they have passed away. Right. So the answer to all of those is false. You guys are so smart. All losses are not the same. And this is what we're here to talk about, is how losses differ from each other and how we grieve. Grief does decline over time, but it's definitely not in a steady fashion. It's more like a messy plate of spaghetti. I think of that plate of spaghetti that's all piled up and it's got lots of sauce and you're trying to use your fork, and then do you chop it? Do you spin it? How do you get that? And then you get it on your clothes. So you're always trying to clean up your grief, right? It just keeps coming up and again as we move on in time. Expressing our feelings of grief is very different for each one of us, as we'll find out through our talk today. And sometimes we'll see somebody with really intense feelings of grief and think that they're losing control or it's abnormal. But you know what? You might have experienced grief before, but you've never experienced the death of this person. So each loss is going to present itself differently in how we grieve, right? Some people might just want to curl into a ball. Some people put themselves over the body. Some people don't want to leave the side. And all of that is normal. And it's not losing control. It's their grief at the moment. And sometimes we do get angry at the person who died, maybe because they didn't take care of themselves, or maybe they left us with a mess, or maybe we learned something about them after they passed away. So there are lots of reasons we could be angry at someone who died. And no, it's not just sick individuals who feel physical pain. We all feel physical pain in our grief. Like just a broken heart is a physical pain that we feel. And I think it's really important to realize that children do grieve. They just don't grieve like adults. They grieve in little spurts, maybe in the middle of play or in the middle of dinner. We don't know. But no, our children grieve just like adults grieve, but in their own way. And we really don't want to protect them from grief because it's part of life. We don't want to protect them from death. Death is part of living. Sometimes you can use the movies and the books. In the back, you'll see there's a suggested reading list, and those books are very helpful in explaining death to children. So what determines how we grieve? This is important. There's a few things that determine how we grieve. The type of loss that the person is experiencing. We know it's not just death that causes grief. It could be the change of a staff member moving from a facility. It could be the death of a friend. That's a death, right? I'm trying to do non-death losses. It could be a divorce. It could be a move. It could be the loss of a special item. You can lose something really cherished, something that you really cherish, and grieve over that. It could be a separation and divorce. It could be a lot of different things besides death. Another thing that determines how we grieve is our relationship to the person. Was it a good, loving relationship? Were you the caregiver for that person, or did the caregiver pass away for a person? So that grief is going to be a little different in each of those roles, right? Was it someone that you had a strained relationship with? And in that case, there might be some unfinished business, things you didn't get to ask or talk about, things you didn't get to resolve, and that can sometimes complicate our grief. So we need to keep that in mind. Was this a family member, or was it a friend? Was it a distant family member or a very close friend? Because we know just because it's family doesn't mean we're always close, and sometimes our closest friends are more like family. So keeping our relationship with that person in mind when somebody is grieving is important. And all of these relationships have roles, right? So we have the role of mother, father, sister, brother, cousin, friend, aunt, uncle, grandparent. But there's also caregiver, social planner, financial planner, driver, right? We have different roles that we play in this person's life. You might be the banker and the shopper. So when someone dies, you lose that role that went along with your relationship with that person. And if it's a caregiver that died, the person needing the care loses that role too. So we have to look at this from both sides. I'm trying to present both sides. So if you can think about that from both ends of the spectrum with everything I'm sharing today, because I think those of us here are caregivers, and we have to keep in mind that those we care for also lose caregivers. How the person died is also going to be something that determines how we grieve. Was this a sudden loss? Was this unexpected? We know how tragic that is when somebody leaves the house to go somewhere and then they don't come home, and then there's a fear of going to the grocery store because they went to the grocery store and they didn't come home, or they went to the hospital and they didn't come home. So there's this sudden loss that can be really traumatic, that suddenly this person who was a constant in your life is not there anymore. But then there's also the other end of the spectrum when you're a long-term caregiver, when you're caring for someone who's got a long-term illness. And some situations you might have a shortened life expectancy is what I'm trying to say. So there's this anticipation of what this is going to be like. And we live in this state of anticipatory grief, the fear of what's going to happen, how is it going to be, what's it going to feel like, how am I going to handle it? And as time gets closer, we feel more of that anticipation of that death. So when we're a long-term caregiver, this is something that has really spoken to me as a caregiver, are the quiet sorrows. When you're a caregiver, everyone is focused on the person who needs the care. Everyone, all your life is surrounded around caring for someone. You give up so much to be a caregiver. And in that giving up, you have these quiet sorrows that sit on your heart. The quiet sorrows are the things that other people don't ask you about, like, how are you doing today? A lot of caregivers don't get that question. A lot of caregivers don't get the help they need because they figure, well, look at them. They're so strong. She handles it all so well, or he handles it all so well. But when you're a caregiver for someone with a shortened life expectancy as well, like with a disease like Alzheimer's, you think about someone with Alzheimer's and dementia, you lose maybe they lose their ability to share things clearly and to remember. And you're already feeling a loss in that relationship. And as the disease progresses, maybe they're not able to communicate as well. So now you're losing the conversation. And then as their physical ability declines, you're losing the ability to go out and do the things you did together. And then all of a sudden you're finding this role reversal. You're the caregiver for a person who might have been your caregiver. So there's these quiet sorrows that sit with a caregiver as they're taking care of someone because they're losing things and their social circle may change. People don't come around as much. They figure, like I said, you're strong, you got it, right? So people don't come around as much. They might see, oh, they got their hands full, we're not going to bother them. In the meantime, the caregiver is saying, I could use a break, right? So those quiet sorrows are a really important aspect of anticipatory grief. And I share that just because we're working with a community that is doing long-term caregiving, right? Or living with someone, right, who has long-term disability. How we cope also determines how we grieve. So if we have healthy coping mechanisms, if we have strong faith, if we have a good social circle, if we take care of ourselves, we stay hydrated, we eat well, we exercise. I'm really big on that. Exercising. How you take care of yourself matters. Are you getting enough sleep? Are you expressing yourself verbally to a friend or to, do you have a counselor? Are you willing to be open? And are you willing to let people in? That determines how we cope, how we get through our grief as well. But then there's also the negative side of coping, those negative coping skills where we can eat too much and sleep too much and maybe drink too much, maybe pull away from people or feel the need to run. You just want to fix it. You're grieving and you don't know what to do about it. And there's all these feelings that sit inside you that create this angst and you don't know what to do with them. So you want to run. You just want to go, thinking it's going to go away. And when you come back from wherever you went, it's going to be okay, right? And that's not how it works. So sometimes those negative coping mechanisms can teach us some things along the way. But when we have healthy coping mechanisms, it certainly does help us. So what are normal signs of grief? What are some normal things we experience in grief? We might have fatigue, real fatigue. I think that's one thing when I went through my significant loss in my life was I had been doing this 17 years and I could not believe how fatigued I was. Like physically felt like my feet had 3 pounds of cement, 3 feet of cement that they were trying to walk out of every step I took. Like my body felt heavy. Then you're going to see sleeplessness or sleeping too much to avoid the pain of the loss. You might see poor nutrition, irritability and mood swings, right? Difficulty concentrating or being able to focus and decisions gets really hard. People get confused, and I can't tell you how many people start to wonder if they have Alzheimer's or a brain tumor or something's wrong with me because I can't remember things. But if you think about it, when we're grieving, we're trying to live in this dual life of moving forward and living our life, but we're also trying to deal with this pain. So we spend our days living in the now, pushing back what hurts. And we're trying to focus here while pushing. We're working constantly, and that's what creates some of the exhaustion and forgetfulness and confusion. In the beginning, you might feel numbness, feelings of just, I don't know how I feel. I can't even give it a name. I don't know how I feel. I'm just numb. And that's normal. One thing we don't think about, and I hear it so much in my work, I learn so much and feel so honored to work with the people I support, but the anxiety and fear that we feel as we go out in life without that person. Because if your special person was someone who went everywhere with you and suddenly they're not there, you're always feeling like you're missing something because you are. You always feel disconnected. So going out to a grocery store then creates a trigger of like, oh, there's their favorite potato chips. I can't tell you how many stories I've heard of people who go into a grocery store and drop everything because they just couldn't deal with the pain because they didn't want to cry in public. And I always say, just cry in public. I did it in Michael's. I saw a mother and daughter shopping together and I just broke down and cried. I'm like, how lucky they are to still have their mom. I wish I had mine. So fears are created and anxiety and separation anxiety can come too, especially when someone close has died and then they're afraid of, a survivor is afraid of someone else dying. So they get a little bit clingy and needy. You might see changes in behaviors. Maybe, we're just not who we used to be. Well, this is who I am in grief. Because when you lose someone so significant in your life, it changes you forever. That's where that pattern of, grief just continues. It just gets a little bit easier. That person is always with us and always in our heart, but it just is challenging, and we're changed. Another normal sign of grief is anger and blame. We get angry at, whoever. We're angry at the doctors. We're angry at the caregiver. We're angry at the person who died. Why didn't they take care of themselves? Why didn't they see this? Why didn't I know? And then we turn it on ourselves. And then we have feelings of guilt. I should have gotten them to the doctor sooner. I should have made them go to the doctor. I should have been a better caregiver. And what I know, is we all do everything for the people we care about from a place of love. Every decision we make, everything we do, always comes from a place of love, and we can only make the best decision we can with the information we have at that time. So I always encourage people, be patient with yourself, be patient with this process, because it's hard, and we can't blame ourselves. Of course, we can look back and go, shoulda, woulda, coulda, but we can't. And in that moment, that was the best decision and the best things and the only way to deal with the situation at the time. So we have these waves of grief, and at first they're really sharp and pointed, and they go into these steep valleys where you just, you're doing really good one day, and the next day you're like, oh my God, I don't know what happened. I thought I was doing so good, right? But as time goes on, those sharp waves kind of soften, and then they become a ripple. But it doesn't happen very steadily, because sometimes you can have these sharp waves and be in your smooth wave, and then suddenly you have this, whoa, I have this trigger, right? I saw something that really set me back. Maybe it was an anniversary, leads me into my triggers. Maybe it was an anniversary, a birthday. Maybe it was seeing someone who looked like them, who looked like the person you lost. Maybe it's a certain smell. When I smell my grandma's chicken, I just love my grandma's chicken, right? So it could be something that's very comforting to smell or see or hear a song, right? My mom's thing was hang on Sloopy. She used to think they sang hang on stupid, right? So now we all sing hang on stupid. We don't sing hang on Sloopy. So when I hear hang on Sloopy, I'm like crying and laughing at the same time doing OHIO, right? Places like the grocery store or going to church or going to friends' houses, these are all triggers that might set that a spark in our grief waves is what I'm trying to say, sorry. There's all these triggers around us every day, and they can come and go. So we have to give ourselves a little bit of grace and realize that every day isn't going to be a good day. And it's okay to have a bad day. I always say it's okay to have a pajama day. I like pajama days. Stay in your pajamas, cry today, look at pictures, do what you need to do for you. So as we go through our grief, we try to accept that this loss is real. We want to work through our pain of grief by letting it out, sharing stories, crying, talking to someone. Then we try to adjust to our environment without them. And one of the things we recommend is taking things and moving them. So if your loved one sat in a particular chair and you walk in that room, and you see that chair, and you're like, they're supposed to be there. But if you take that chair and you move it to the other side of the room, it's like, whoa, something's not right in here. It's kind of like going from your bedroom to the kitchen and you can't remember what you went there for because you were distracted on the way. Moving that furniture around, making some little change, and we all do that. Am I not the only one? Am I the only one? I don't know. I know you do that too. So yeah, making some minor adjustments. They don't have to be big things. We don't have to get rid of everything and paint it a different color and move. We just can make some minor adjustments in our environment and then find a lasting connection with the person we loved. And that goes back to that duality. There's a poem back there I'm going to share with you at the end. And it talks about that. We're living in the now, but we're living in the past. We're loving now, but we're missing the person we lost. We're trying, we're sad, but we're trying to feel joy at the same time. And then we have these feelings of guilt for feeling joy. It's just so Are y'all seeing the messy plate of spaghetti, right? It's complicated. It's complicated. When I think of our special population of those with special needs, I think it's just so important to remember we all grieve, and we all grieve in different ways. And you might see changes in behavior. You might see more acting out, and some of these are normal grief responses, right? So you might see acting out. You might see the neediness and the clinging. You might see a change in a behavior that had been resolved, and suddenly it's come back again. You might see that there might be bedwetting because of that fear, whatever happens for them at night. So we're all going to grieve. We might become more, you might see more acting out behaviors, maybe hitting or crying, whatever that acting out behavior could be. So keep that all in mind, that we all grieve, but sometimes when we can't verbalize our feelings, we act them out, right? And then some of us physically can't verbalize our feelings, so we're definitely going to act them out. So how do we support someone like that? For those who are verbal, we listen, we validate, we hold a hand on the back. We don't judge, and we just sit with them. Let them cry. Don't try to fix it. We always want to fix it, right? We're helpers. We want to fix it. But the way we fix it is by allowing them to move through their grief, to get to a healthy place, to allow them to have their feelings. We want to be honest and direct. Sometimes our bodies just can't be fixed. Sometimes doctors can't fix it. Sometimes we have diseases that there is no cure for, and our bodies die. We don't breathe. We don't have a pulse. Our heart doesn't beat. This is being direct. And when we are direct and having those kinds of things, those kind of conversations, it gives them an opportunity to feel like they're in a safe environment to share their feelings. We want to avoid things like saying, oh, they went to sleep, or God needed another angel, or, there's another flower in God's garden, because then they're thinking, well, I'm a good person. Am I going to go to God's garden? Are you going to go to God's garden? And reminding, that we're healthy. We're healthy here. We're safe and we're healthy, and it's okay. One of the things we like to do with some of the kids that we work with is draw a body diagram. We'll sometimes have them lay out on paper and then ask them where they feel their feelings, where they feel their grief. And then you can go with that, because sometimes you'll have complaints like, my tummy hurts, my stomach hurts. I don't know why, but my stomach hurts, right? Well, what's been going on? And then we can look at, there's been this loss and this is where they're feeling it. Maybe they just don't know how to express that feeling. Or my head hurts, or my arm hurts. My arm hurts over here. So drawing that diagram gives them an opportunity to express where they're feeling things, and you an opportunity to see where that's happening, and then to be able to address it a little bit. We can also help by minimizing any changes in our environment and in our routine. We all like that routine, right? Routine is so important. So minimizing any kind of changes like that is going to be helpful in keeping things as normal as possible. I mean, that's just for any of us, right? You lose someone you love, and you have no control over that. And then we try to control everything around us that we can. And that's where some of those behaviors come from, right? So when we can say, okay, I know what my routine is. I'm going to go to work this day, and I have this at this time and this at this time, and keep everything the same. That's one thing I know that's going to be constant in my life. So minimizing change is important. Again, looking for those nonverbal cues. Is there a lack of motivation and interest in activities? Are they, withdrawn? Is there irritability or changes in sleep or appetite? So when you're seeing behaviors like this, it's good to talk to a friend or talk to a counselor. There might need to be changes made in a plan of care. If you're working with someone with special needs, you might need to change their plan of care and have a discussion with family. Another thing to do is to create some kind of a ritual to honor the person who lost. And that could be having a place where someone, maybe you have a candle set up, right? You have a candle set up and they can come and put something by the candle or have a picture by the candle. We have a little place for people to go. You can do it as a group as well. And have some kind of a little ceremony. So some of the other things that we can do to help in coping is I'm really big on exercise. I've always been like, if there's one thing you can do today, I just walk to the mailbox. Go to the end of your driveway and come back. But sometimes going for a walk with a friend opens the gates to self-expression. So going for a walk is also a form of exercise. So we're killing two birds with one stone here, right? We're getting out and we're moving. Eating healthy helps us cope. Listening to music, massage, quiet places help. Talking to a friend. Murray book. And this is something to think about as well. We all know a person who died from our perspective. The family has family perspective, right? So my cousin died suddenly. I decided to ask everyone at the wake, this was, 10, 15 years ago, to send me pictures. All we had was email back then, so I don't know how long ago that is. But send me pictures and stories of my cousin. He was a school teacher. He impacted thousands of lives, right? And I created a 60-page memory book from those pictures and stories for his children to have, because they were 9 and 10 at the time. And then I made one for my uncle, so he would have one, right? So that was therapeutic for me. I learned about my cousin. I was processing my grief, and then I had a gift to give. I just always liked that idea. It was something really great to work through for myself. Some other things that we can do with our population is to do things like this, create like a memory mobile. This gives an opportunity to talk about the person, creating a piece of art. So this is about my dad. My dad was a baseball player, and he was very funny. He always had a really bad joke to tell you, and he sold cars, right? So these are things that when you create this, it gives you a chance to tell a story. Another thing you can do is create a stepping stone. This one's really heavy. This would be great for a workout. Create a stepping stone, and these can be made thinner, so you can make them out of paper mache as well, and you can hang them on a wall. You can put a hanger on the back, or you could put it in your garden. You can create a candle out of glass or paper mache. I like to do this one. It's a gratitude jar, but it also has a candle. So inside, people share positive thoughts for the day. When you're feeling down, you put take a positive thought out, and then at night there's a candle in there, and you decorate it how you want with Mod Podge and tissue paper. One of our other favorite things we like to do is to create a mask. So our mask is a way of expressing what we show others, what we're comfortable showing others, and what we think other people see. And on the other side is what we don't share with others, and what we don't let other people see, what we keep to ourselves. So it's a great way to have conversation about grief and how we're really feeling, because you come to work and you put your face on, right? I had a woman in my group years ago, and she'd say, I'm just so tired. Every day I come home from work and I take my mask off, and it feels so good. Wow. And we make those too. She didn't have a mask, but it was very poignant. Another thing is creating a collage. This could be a collage about the person who died and sharing memories. You could find pictures in a magazine. And then one of my favorites, I was going to leave these on your seat, but I didn't know how long they would last, because when we walk by, they blow away. I like to teach people breathing exercises, because when we relax, we can cope a little better. And so I teach them a diaphragmatic breathing, and then as we exhale, we want our feather to blow away. If our feather doesn't blow away, maybe we're not blowing through our mouth, or we're not blowing hard enough. You want to purse your lips and blow it through a long breath that lets your feather float away. Then sometimes we can use the black ones and blow away the dark stuff, right? The difficult feelings. So feathers are a great way to work on breath control and relaxation. So a few things I want you to remember. Grief is ongoing. It's ever changing. It's a messy plate of spaghetti. You guys are all want spaghetti for lunch, I think. Grief is normal and it's necessary after we've had a death, and we need to be validated. We need to be validated in our grief. So I encourage you to be kind to one another and be kind to yourself as you grieve. Be patient because this is hard. Grief is hard. I want to share that poem with you I mentioned earlier. It's called Today I Grieve by Jennifer Stern. Today I grieve. My heart is heavy, the loneliness intense, the isolation pervasive, the sorrow deep. One day, 5 years, 20 years, there's no timeline. I loved you every day that you were here, and I will grieve for you every day that you are gone. Today I grieve by staying in bed in the dark silence. Yesterday I grieved looking at pictures, watching old movies, crying with every passing moment. The day prior I grieved walking in the park, cleaning, cooking, working. Each day shows me how I must grieve. Each day informs me what I must do to get through. I do the best I can to hold the duality of life without you, to live and to grieve, to allow for joy while holding sorrow, to connect while feeling alone, to find purpose while feeling lost, to love while longing, to be present while wishing I could go back in time. Today and every day, I do the best I can to grieve with courage and resilience, even if some days it appears not to be true. My grief is personal. Today I grieve. Thank you. If anyone has any questions? No?
Address grieving when people are still alive, like the child turns into a different sex or whatever their lives.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's another one. She was talking about with someone who might go through a sex change, or is that what you're saying, right? And how that's grieving the person that you knew who is now somebody different and addressing that need differently. Absolutely, there's grief in that. For sure. Anyone else? All right, thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. Those of you that, thank you as well. We will be sending an email with a follow-up information. Receive all the handouts. They're also in the back, but I will also include them in the follow-up email along with the certificate for certification, the evaluation, and the link to the YouTube training that will be available on our YouTube channel. So thank you and have a great day.